awesome to be here. And I just want to tell you, I mean, when I made the right-hand turn up here, I mean, right down the road here and come up and saw your church up on top of the hill, I thought, man, what a beautiful setting. And beautiful area. I'm an outdoorsman. I love the outdoors. I mean, and it just says, man, there might be deer stepping right here onto this, deck up here. I mean, but it is so good for me to be here. And again, as Pastor said, if you're 32 years or younger, you probably don't remember that play. But how many of you all remember that play? Very nice, very nice. Now, I'm just going to run back over it a little bit, okay? I mean, that was the 7th game of the National League Championship Series. Whoever won that ball game was going to go to the World Series, and we were losing 2-0 going into that last inning. And Doug Drabeck for the Pittsburgh Pirates was pitching a masterful ball game, and didn't know whether or not we were going to come back or not. And a matter of fact, I mean, Terry Pendleton and I sat up on a stage not too many years ago. And we were talking about that night and so on and so forth and about the Braves. And when it got around to talking about that particular inning, I mean, he broke in and he said, I want you to know something. He said, I knew we were going to win that ball game. And I looked at him and I said, I'm glad you did, because I certainly didn't. And but Terry, being our captain of our team, he started things off. He got a double down the right field line. And then at that point in time, David Justice comes up to the plate and hits a hard ground ball to Jose Chicolin at second base. Jose had only made 6 errors all year long, and that night he made his 7th. And so I was on deck. I was coming to the plate, and I got to set this up for you. When I played in Pittsburgh, I mean, Doug Drabeck's family and my family were extremely close. As a matter of fact, we were godparents. I mean, we were godparents to his kids. And so you can imagine what's going through his head. I'd hit a double the time before that against him, and he's sitting there saying to himself, I cannot let the godparents to my kid win this ball game. And I had every intention. I want you to know I had every intention to hitting a home run right at that time, but he never gave me a chance. He walked me on 4 straight pitches. And so Skip Carey, you heard Skip Carey doing the announcing right there. I mean, as I walked down to first base, bases are loaded now, but as soon as I stepped on first base, Skip Carey's up in the press box saying, okay, Bobby Cox, get somebody to run for Sid Bream. If you can't find somebody in the dugout, get somebody up in the stands. Just get somebody to run for Sid Bream. Bobby didn't do anything. It surprises me. But, I mean, at the same time, Jim Leading goes out and he said, okay, I've seen enough. He brings in Stan Belinda as closer. And at that point, Ronnie Gant comes up to the plate and hits a long fly ball to left field, takes Barry Bonds back to the warning track. And didn't get over the fence. It could have been a grand slam, but it didn't get over the fence, so we had a sacrifice fly, 1 out. But now we have a guy on first and second instead of a guy on third base, and so we have to get a base hit in order for it to happen. Damon Berryhill comes up to the plate, and I mean, on a controversial third strike call, he gets walked. So now, once again, we're bases loaded. And as soon as I step on second base again, Bobby's or Skip's up there in the press box again. Bobby, do not have a brain cramp here. Get somebody to run for Sid Bream. But I want you to know something. Bobby knew something that nobody else did. Terry Pendleton and Deion Sanders, we had a big race, and they were the 2 instruments to get that race started. I was racing against Damon Berryhill to see who was faster between a catcher and myself. I have the ledger right on my phone. I want you to know that. I have the ledger. And it was divided down the middle, and people put names on Berryhill's side and how much you were betting, and people put names on my side who was betting. Guess who bet on my side? Bobby Cox. Bobby Cox bet $20 on me that I was going to win that race, and I blew Damon Berryhill away, so he knew how fast I was, folks. But I do have to admit something to you here tonight. Deion Sanders beat me in a race. This is the bad part, and this is literally the bad part. He was running backwards when I was running forwards. And I mean, I don't know if that's how slow I was or how fast he was, but I mean, an incredible, incredible athlete. But I had to share that with you. But so here I am on second base. Brian Hunter comes up to the plate, broken bat, pop fly right behind second base. So we have 2 outs. I mean, and here comes Francisco Cabrera to the plate, and everybody's sitting and saying, who in the world is Francisco Cabrera? But I want you to know something. As a ball player, as a teammate, we knew that Frankie could hit the ball. Frankie probably had more power on that team than anybody that was on that team. And matter of fact, Frankie, if you were taking batting practice and you had your back turned to the batting cages and you had no idea who was hitting in the batting cage, and you heard that distinctive schwack, schwack, schwack that came off of his bat, you said, man, that was Frankie. Frankie could hit the baseball. Unfortunately, he couldn't find a place to play on the field, so he never had a long career. But Frankie comes up to the plate, and I with CBS filming that game, the people in Fulton County Stadium, not Turner Field or Truist Park, but Fulton County Stadium, 3 stadiums ago, with them doing the tomahawk chop and with them doing the chant and everything else was going on, I'm out there sitting and saying, how in the world can I make this more exciting for the people in Fulton County Stadium and for people watching? So I don't know if you took notice right there, but as I came around third base, as I stepped on third, I peeked out to Barry Bonds. I saw that it wasn't going to be a close play, so I just shifted down just a little bit so I could slide and I could beat it by that much. You believe that? I told you guys to be truthful. I can't even be. But, well, folks, let me just say this. I shouldn't have been out there. Bobby Cox, for many, 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 many years, said that he had nobody to put at first base. Well, that wasn't true. Because Brian Hunter platooned with me, and he just pinched hit that inning, and he could have played first base. Francisco Cabrera played first base, so he could have been at first base, after that inning if we had tied the ball game up. The person that we couldn't have afforded, we didn't have a second baseman. Mark Lemke was pinched hit for in the 7th inning, and Rafael Belliard was pinched hit for in the 9th inning, so we had nobody to play second base. So, he could have easily had a pitcher out there that would have been in the dugout by the time that I got to home plate. But I really, and I mean this with all my heart, I really and truly believe that God had that all orchestrated. God had me out there for a purpose, and specifically so that I could be here with you guys tonight to tell about my love for Jesus Christ. And so I am grateful to be able to be here with you. And, I just pray that, as Mike prayed and as Randall prayed or Daniel prayed, I just ask you guys to just sit back and enjoy this night and let the Lord do what he wants to do in your life, okay? But, some of the other things that have taken place in my life, as far as my baseball career, for years, I had a cassette tape of my first hit in Major League Baseball. I didn't have a cassette player to play it. And so for years, I couldn't listen to Vin Scully, the announcer for the Los Angeles Dodgers, do my first base hit. But finally, I found a cassette player, and I put it onto my phone. And so if you don't mind, indulge me here for a second. I'm going to play my first hit in Major League Baseball with Vin Scully announcing my hit, okay?
So we had told you the report on Landro about how he had a bone scan and an x-ray, and that it was a day-to-day proposition. And Landro is not capable, evidently, of even coming up to bat. So here is Sid Bream. He is 0 for 2 since being called up. Big left-hand hitting first baseman. He's batting for Howe. Tying run at third, 2 out. Hume deals, and he is inside. Ball 1, 1-0. On deck, Steve Yeager. The next one to Bream is a line drive base hit. The ball game is even.
So who's the one that was smart enough to remember that I got a pinch hitter then too, okay? A pinch runner. I mean, I heard somebody smirk a little bit there whenever they said that, but so that was my first hit. My first home run, well, actually my second hit came off of somebody that you guys might remember, and I always have a hard time remembering his name. I mean, let me think. Nolan Ryan. That's who it was. My second hit came off of Nolan Ryan, hit a line drive to left center field, scored Mike Marshall. And I came back to the bench and I said, who in the heck is Nolan Ryan? You guys make such a big stink out of this guy. I don't think I got another hit off of him the rest of my career, but Nolan, that was a very, very special thing. I have that baseball at home. My first home run came off of Mike Krukow from San Francisco in Chavez Ravine, Los Angeles Stadium in April of 1985. John Smoltz doesn't like me saying this, but I went 5 for 5 off of him when I was in Pittsburgh, hit a home run off of him in that 5 for 5. And and then I hit a long home run off of Goose Gossage. And when, he wasn't in his prime at the time, he was in San Diego, but anytime that you have a chance to say that you hit a home run off of Goose Gossage, you brag about it. And so I was very, very thankful for that. And then, guys, I mean, one of the stories that I love sharing, I don't know if you know the story of me coming to Atlanta, but, I was in Pittsburgh. In 1986, I started as a Pittsburgh Pirate. And for that year, we lost 103 ball games in that year. But every year we started to get better to the place. And in 1990, we won the National League East, and we had to go up against the Cincinnati Reds. And that was my free agent year. After that year was my free agency, and so we got beat by the Cincinnati Reds. And the very next day after we got beat by the Cincinnati Reds, the management for Pittsburgh Pirates came out and said, Sid Bream's our first priority to sign for the 1991 season. So my wife and I were ecstatic, thinking we're going to get a multi-year contract. We got a great team. We're going to get right back to where we were before. And we were excited. And negotiations started, and management didn't get close to market price on me, let alone anything more for being their priority. So free agency opened up, and at that point in time, the Atlanta Braves gave me a great offer right off the get-go and said, you need to make a decision, because if you're not coming, we're going to go after another first baseman. So my wife and I just said, we're going to come to Atlanta. But that whole night, we cried our eyes out, literally. We cried our eyes out thinking, man, we're leaving, this team, all the great relationships that we have on this team and so on and so forth. And the next morning, I woke up and I called Jim Leland, the manager for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I said, Skip, I said, am I bound to this contract? And he said, Sid, you haven't signed anything yet. You're not bound to this contract. So at that point in time, I called my attorney. And guys, I don't know if you remember when Payne Stewart was on his plane and he went down, my attorney was on that plane with him. I mean, Robert Fraley, but for an hour and a half, it was actually 2 different phone calls, but for an hour and a half, Robert Fraley tried to talk me out of doing what I was going to do and stay in Pittsburgh. And finally, at the end of our conversation, he brought this up. He said, Sid, let me ask you a question. What happens if they sign you and then they trade you down to Atlanta? You're going to look like an idiot. You're going to have this much money, and now you're going to be playing for that. And I said, great point. I said, let's go back to the Pirates and ask them for a no-trade clause. And so they went back to the Pirates and asked for a no-trade clause, and they said no to a no-trade clause. And I said, man, if I'm your first priority, I'd hate to see what your last one is. And so we came down to Atlanta, and we all know what happened. I mean, we last place to first place in 1991. We knocked the Pirates out of it in 91, and then in 92 we did the same thing. But, the first time that we went back to Pittsburgh was in May of that year. And I didn't play the first game that we played against the Pittsburgh Pirates because they had Big John Smiley, a lefty, throwing against us, and we got killed that game. The score was 9-1 going into the last inning, and Jim Leland took out John Smiley and put Stan Belinda in, and I think he did that in order to, do what Bobby Cox did, and he put me on deck to have it be a pinch hitter. And so as they announced me to go up to the plate to pinch hit, the people in Pittsburgh gave me a 5-minute standing ovation. And literally, I mean, my eyes were watering, my knees were knocking, and I'm sitting there thinking, how in the world am I going to hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball? I mean, with all this going on, and stepped into the plate. Somehow I swung the bat and I hit the ball, and it went over the center field wall. And that's out of my 90 home runs that I hit in Major League Baseball, that's the only one that I hit straight away center field. All my home runs are right center field down the line, and I hit some home runs to left field, but that was the only one that I hit the straightaway center field. And I came around the bases and stepped on home plate, and the people in Pittsburgh once again gave me a 5-minute standing ovation, and it meant a lot to myself and my family. I just kept on saying, I wish they would have done that a little bit more when I was there instead of the boos that I used to get all the time. But it meant a lot to me. Meant a lot to my wife, and so we still live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a Pennsylvania native. Grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Mount Holly Springs, a little town. We had no red lights when I was growing up, and it was a great little upbringing. I enjoyed it. But that's some of the things that occurred as far as my baseball career. Hopefully there's a couple more than that, but at the same time, for time's sake and to get us moving here, that's all I'm going to present to you tonight. But you know, one of the things that I enjoy doing every time I go out to speak is I love to honor our military. I love to say thank you. And I found a story, I mean, of Tony Blair, the ex-Prime Minister of England, was asked one day, why in the world do you like America so much? And this was his response. He said, you know, you can tell what a country's like, first of all, by who wants in and who wants out. And we see that today. I mean, there's a lot of people that like to be in our country. But then secondly, he said, I mean, in my opinion, there's only been 2 people that have ever been willing to die for you. Number one is Jesus Christ, and the other one is the American GI. I mean, one died for your soul, and the other one died for your freedom. So, I mean, guys, I mean, what I'd like to do tonight, I mean, if there's anybody in here that's active or retired from the military, if you're a first responder, or if you're a family member that lost somebody, they gave the ultimate sacrifice to keep us being able to do what we're doing, could you just please stand up and let us say thank you? I mean, for being very, very nice. Thank you. As I like to share, and ladies and gentlemen, those are our true heroes. I mean, you know, it's not a baseball player. It's not a president. I mean, these are the ones that we should honor, because, I mean, they're the reason that we were able to do what we're doing here today. And so I hope and pray that you guys continue to pray for them, continue to pray for our military and first responders that are out there on a daily basis, doing the job in order to keep our land free, okay? So with all that said and done, now let me just share, I mean, the first part was baseball. You know, got the hero aspect out of it, but I love the outdoors. I'm an avid bow hunter. I love to bow hunt. I mean, that's all I basically do anymore. I mean, I might duck hunt or goose hunt or something like that with a gun, but I'm a bow hunter. I've been all over the place. I've been over to Africa twice. I've been all over the western states. You know, I've been whitetail hunting. I go to Kansas and Iowa almost every year. And, you know, I love my hunting. And so before I get started with anything as far as my talk, if you guys don't mind, this is my office upstairs. These are some of the animals that I've taken. And just a little brief time of that, you know, some of the animals that I've taken over the years. And that one down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's my first buck that I ever shot with my bow. I mean, dropped him on the spot. I mean, I feel bad. I didn't know what to do. And so I had to go up and slice his neck. That was not pleasant. So, but some of the animals that I've taken, that buffalo that I shot with my bow, I got 857 pounds of deboned meat off of that thing. I mean, so that's a kudu and a gemsbok, and then I got a Dall sheep. Those are a couple Ohio bucks that I've taken over the years. I took an alligator with a 10-foot 4-inch alligator with my bow. And, you know, and down here on the bottom is a zebra that I shot over. And I know you ladies are sitting, oh, how could you shoot a horse? But that, you know, a real nice black bear up in Alberta. So those are just some of the things that I've taken over the years. But you know, I just want to share with you as far as the outdoors is concerned. I mean, if you love the outdoors, I think most of us in here that love the outdoors, I mean, where did that come from? I mean, my dad was very, very instrumental in me loving the outdoors. I mean, and I can remember, you know, I'll tell people down here in the South, you know, if your kid's old enough to pull a trigger, he's old enough to hunt. I mean, up home, we're finally getting into a mentor program that you can go out. My grandson just finally took his first deer this year with a crossbow at 7 years old. But back when I was growing up, you had to be 12. You took your hunter safety course and you had to be 12 years old. My dad wouldn't take us out until we were 13. You know, just to give us another year of maturing. He probably did it that way so that he wouldn't have to deal with us. He could go out and do his own hunting. But at the same time, I mean, you know, so for all those years, I'm watching my dad, I'm watching my uncles, my grandpa, my brother, my cousins going out and hunting. And I mean, and I couldn't wait to get there. But in the meantime, I mean, there were things that took place in my days that, I mean, just really got me excited. I mean, and I talk about that because the first day of rabbit and pheasant hunting up home, my grandfather's brother had a big farm. And so that's where everybody went the first day of pheasant and rabbit hunting. I mean, and I wasn't able to go for so many years, but I can remember sitting at home just waiting for my dad to come home from pheasant and rabbit hunting. And as he pulled up in front of our house, I mean, at that point in time, I'd run to the back porch, and my dad would bring his boat coat and everything around the back, and you know, as a young boy, I'd have an opportunity to reach into that coat and I'd pull out a rabbit. And I'd sit there and let my dad, I mean, I'd hold the back legs and my dad would sit there and skin that rabbit, and I'd sit there and say, man, this is so awesome. I can't wait to hunt. And so I did that for all the rabbits that he had. And then all of a sudden I'd reach in and, you know, I'd pull out a rooster pheasant. And I mean, being a rooster pheasant, I mean, today, if you shoot a quail, you shoot a dove, or you shoot a pheasant today, most of the time now all you do is you just take the breast off and you let everything go. Back then, we stuck that stuff in scalding hot water and pulled it out, and you sit there and pluck it just like a chicken. I mean, and again, as a young boy, I used to sit and say, man, this is awesome. I can't wait to do this stuff. I mean, this is so fun. Up in Pennsylvania as well, when it came to the first day of deer season, we had off the first day. Our first day of deer season was always on a Monday. And so in school, you had off. But again, I couldn't hunt, you know, for those first 12, 13 years of my life. So, I mean, I can remember my dad, and they would get up early in the morning. And they would, you know, they'd go over to a place called Ickersburg, and they would hunt. And all day long, I'd be sitting there going back and forth in my family room, just wondering who in the world got a deer, who got a deer. And then finally, as it got nighttime and I knew that they'd be starting to come back, I mean, I'd start pacing back and forth in our living room, just waiting for that caravan of cars to come and stop in front of our house. And I'd run out and I'd be looking on top of the vehicles. That was when you just do them on top of the vehicles, and everybody was sitting there saying, oh, look at that, look at that. But I did that hoping my dad got something, hoping my grandpapa or my uncle, or I didn't want my brother to get anything, but I was hoping somebody got a deer. Because if they got a deer, we were going over to my grandfather's place and we were going to have a buckskinning party. And that was fun. I couldn't wait for the opportunity to finally get out and start to do a little bit of hunting. And so 13 years old, I finally got started. And as I got out into the woods, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the things that my dad taught me. I mean, first of all, he taught me about gun safety. And he taught me about making sure that you know where everybody is, as far as, you know, before you shoot, make sure you know where everybody is. You know, he taught me about, he was the first one that told me about how to know where the deer would be coming through. I mean, look at the land and see how things are going through. He taught me about patience as well. And the way that he taught me about patience, folks, is we had a dog named Snoopy, a beagle. Snoopy was a great rabbit dog. He didn't listen a lick, but he was a great rabbit dog. And I can remember sitting in a field, standing there beside my dad, my uncles and everybody were up along this field. And I can remember, all of a sudden nobody knew where Snoopy was. And people were hollering, Snoopy! Here's Snoopy! Snoopy! Come here, Snoopy! Nobody knew where Snoopy was. And all of a sudden out in the field, oh! Oh! I'd look up at my dad. Dad, we got to go after the dog and get the rabbit. He said, son, just sit right here. So that dog would start to run that rabbit, and all of a sudden you'd hear, oh, oh, oh. Dad, the rabbit's getting away. Sit right here. And literally that dog at times would go out of earshot. And then all of a sudden you'd start to hear, bang! Did I get anybody? And my dad explained to me at that point in time, he said, what you have to understand is that if that dog doesn't push that rabbit too hard, a lot of times he's just going to go out, he's going to make a big circle, and he's going to come right back to where he was, and somebody's going to have an opportunity for him. So he taught me all about patience. He taught me how to put a fish, bait my fishing hook and throw it out and so on and so forth. I do remember catching his hat one time as I was throwing out. He didn't like that a whole lot. But, he was instrumental. He was instrumental in me starting to learn to love the outdoors. And so I'm thankful for my dad for doing that as far as teaching me those things. But, there were a lot of things that my dad taught me that he didn't say anything about it, just by his actions. And I can remember, watching my dad. We had 6 kids in our family. My dad worked at a job for 48 years. Sometimes he had to work 3 jobs just to put enough food on the table. And, it would have been real easy for my dad to take a couple more rabbits than he was supposed to. It would have been real easy for him to take a couple more pheasants than he was supposed to, or squirrels or a deer. But I never ever watched my dad poach anything. At the same time, guys, I want you to know that I never watched my dad go on somebody's property without permission. He would always make sure that he asked for permission before he went on anybody's property. I have a gentleman, he's no longer here, one of your game commissioners here in Georgia. He used to be over on the opposite side over by Athens, but his name was Stan Elrod. He said he could write a book. He could write a book about pastors that he's caught going onto people's properties without permission and poaching without permission. So not a good sign for our pastors. But at the same time, my dad, I can remember the whole aspect of, the fishing. And I can remember, we went to a lake called Laurel Lake, and we had our boat sitting out on Laurel Lake, and there was a time that you were able to start to fish. And I'd be sitting there in that boat as a young boy, and my dad, we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden I look over to my left, and in a boat, somebody's throwing out their fishing lines 15 minutes before it was time. I said, Dad, look, they're throwing out their lines. Can I get my line in the water? He said, Sid, it's not time. And I can remember me sitting there and looking over to my right, and somebody's pulling a trout out, and I said, Dad, they're catching all the fish. Son, it's not time. And so when it got time, we were able to bait our hooks, and we were able to start throwing things out. I can remember being out in the woods with my dad, those first couple years of being deer hunting. And I can remember standing by him. And there was a time frame, 20 minutes after sunrise or whatever it was in Pennsylvania. And our rules were you couldn't load your gun until it was time. And I can remember sitting there beside my dad and having a buck walk across in front of us. And, Dad, there's a buck right there. And he said, son, I'm sorry. It's not time. And so when the time came, we were able to load our guns. But by that time, that deer was gone. And so why am I trying to tell you all that? See, my dad was a man of integrity. My dad was a man of character. And what he showed me, made an influence on me. It showed me about how to take care of your kids. But that wasn't the case with some of the areas that I went to. I mean, I went down to a Safari Club International meeting one night, and I was there on behalf of Christian Sports International, a ministry up there. And I was supposed to talk about Christian Sports International, but this was a new chapter that was being formed, and so they brought a president from another chapter in that was very successful, and they announced him to come up and speak, and as they announced him to come up and speak, the first words that came out of his mouth, and there were a row of kids right in the front row, and the first thing that came out of his mouth is, man, I was driving down the road the other day, and I looked up into this power line, and there stood a monster buck. And he said, I put my window down, and I was just getting ready to shoot, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and somebody was coming behind. I had to pull my gun in, and I said, I was so ticked off. And I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? I mean, he just told all those kids it was all okay to poach a deer. And so when I had my chance to talk, I mean, I didn't talk about Christian Sports International right off the get-go. When I got up, I pointed right at him, and Pastor, I'm not saying it was you, but I pointed right at him. I said, this is exactly what we don't need out in the hunting woods. I mean, he just told every one of those kids it was all right to poach a deer. He didn't like me. I didn't care. But I mean, folks, I mean, we got to start standing up and saying what's right and what's wrong. At the same time, I spoke up in Erie, Pennsylvania. When I was talking about that thing with Safari Club International, I was up in Erie, Pennsylvania speaking, and somebody came up to me after my talk, and he said, Sid, let me tell you this story. I live right on a steelhead fishing stream. And when the steelhead are running, people don't come to me and say, man, can I go across your property or fish on your, fish right here on your stream. They just do it. He said, that's not the bad part. He said, at the end of the day, when everybody's leaving, I had to go out with not a trash bag, but with trash bags to pick up the stuff that everybody left, out there along the stream. Folks, what are we teaching our kids? I have a brother-in-law that they have a little camp up along the turnpike in Pennsylvania. And he was telling me the story how he was sitting in camp, and all of a sudden his nephew came back from camp with this trail camera. He said, where did you get that trail camera? He said, well, Dad, Uncle, I found it out on a tree out there. He said, well, who gave you the right, who told you that you could take it? He said, go out there and put it back on the tree. Where did he learn that from? He learned it from his dad. What are we teaching our kids? What are they seeing in us? What's her name? Saturday Night Live. Gilda Radner. Anybody remember Gilda Radner from Saturday Night Live? Gilda Radner shared a story of her neighbor that had a golden retriever. And the golden retriever was pregnant, but they were out mowing their yard, and I guess they were playing ball with this golden retriever, and somehow the ball got close to the mower, and the dog slid, and it got its legs caught up underneath the mower deck. And at that point in time, they had to decide, what were they going to do? Were they going to try to euthanize the dog and save the puppies, or try to save the dog and see what happened with the puppies? So they went ahead and tried to save the dog. So they had to amputate on both back legs in order for that dog to see if it could live, and it did. It started to live, but as it started to heal, you know where that dog got around? It would lay down on its brisket. It would put its front legs out in front of itself, and then it would pull its hunches up underneath in order to get around the house. So as that dog eventually had its puppies, it either had 6, I can't remember the story, if it was 6 or 9 puppies. But and every one of those puppies had all 4 legs. But you know how those puppies started to get around right away? They got down on their brisket, put their front legs out in front of themselves, and pulled their hunches up underneath themselves. I think you know why I tell that story. What our kids see us do, that's what our kids are going to do. And my challenge for each one of us in here, whether it's the outdoors, whether it's our taxes, whether it's coming to church, whatever it might be, what are they seeing in you? Are they seeing a man of character? Are they seeing a mom of character, of integrity and honor? Or are they seeing somebody that's snubbing it to snub it? They're not paying their taxes. They're not doing the right things. Challenge for you. But then the last thing, I'm so thankful that my mom and dad did is they took me to church. Pastor was talking how he went to church Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, and I did the same thing growing up. And there were times that I sat there as a young kid saying, why in the world do I have to be in church all the time? Today, I'm thankful that I had a mom and dad that loved me that much to take me to church. But here's my challenge to you as moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas. If I saw you out on the street someplace and you had no idea who I was, and I come up and ask you, I said, what are your priorities for your kids? What would you tell me? I bet you every one of you in here, at least 95% of you would sit and say this: I want my kids to be healthy. I want my kids to get a good education. I want my kids to get a good job. I want my kids to have, find a great spouse and have grandkids for me. And so on and so forth. And folks, I want you to know something. None of those things are wrong. But if your first priority for your kids is for them not to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, can I just say you're messed up? You're messed up because nothing else really matters. They can have the best job in the world, but one of these days they're going to stand before Jesus Christ. And I don't want to hear any of my kids say or hear the Lord say, depart from me. 5 years ago, I had a nephew that OD'd in his grandma's bathroom and died. At 78 years old, he went forward and gave his heart to Jesus Christ. But there was no fruit. There was nothing there from that time frame to say that Danny was a Christian. We do know about God's grace. We do know about God's mercy. But I want you to know it tore me up. Tore me up to think that Danny was gone. He was going to be in hell for eternity. I have 4 children, guys. I have 3 great daughter-in-laws, as Pastor talked about. Every one of those individuals that I know without a shadow of a doubt know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And it brings me so much peace. I can put my head on a pillow at night and know that if something happened to me, something happened to them, I know that I'd be in heaven with Jesus Christ. They would be in heaven with Jesus Christ. And I'd see him again. But folks, what are you? Just understand this is your life. This is all of our lives in here, whether it's talking about our kids or whether we're talking about you. There's your life. I don't care if you live to be Methuselah's age. There's your life. But from the point of death, and the Bible says that every one of us in here is appointed to die. Out there is eternity. And folks, I want to bet on eternity with heaven and not hell. Again, going back to our kids, we did everything. We did everything for our kids to put them into places where they were going to hear about the name of Jesus Christ. We took them to camps, baseball clinics, wherever we could, so that somebody else could speak truth into them. Is that your priority? And if it's not, shame on you. Maybe you need to be thinking about where you're going to be spending eternity as well. But folks, I'll just close it by saying two different things here. A scenario, first of all. The doctor just gave you guys 24 hours to live. What are you going to do with that 24 hours? Folks, statistics says this. First thing that people do is they get around their families for strength, to tell them that they love them, that they're going to miss them. Second thing that people do is they start to think about their regrets, relationships that have been busted, whether parents or siblings or son or daughters or whatever it might be, and they go out and they try to restore those relationships, and they're probably doing that because of what the third thing is. People start to think about eternity, where they're going to spend eternity. And so I always say, why in the world do we have to have a doctor tell us we have 24 hours to live before we start thinking about our families a little bit more? Taking care of them, letting them know how much we love them. Dads, moms, grandmas, grandpas, our kids today, we need to love on them. We need to affirm them. And as I've shared, I know that there were times where I wanted to reach back and strangle every one of my kids. But folks, I mean, they're too important. I have a 37-year-old, a 34-year-old, a 30-year-old, and a 27-year-old. And even today, when I tell them I'm proud of them, they eat it up. They love to hear that their mom and dad are proud of them. And at the same time, do you have regrets? Are there individuals, do you have parents that you're just not getting along with? Mother and father-in-laws that you're just not getting along with? Siblings, son or daughter, friends. Can we be men and women enough to go back at this point in time and just say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what took place in our lives. I mean, but I'd love to be able to restore this relationship. It's tough. Tough to do because, folks, we're a bunch of selfish individuals. But at the same time, it's worth it. And then the last thing is, why don't we all start to think about eternity? Because, folks, we're not guaranteed even walking out of this place tonight. A lot of us in here, we think, man, I got 30, 40, 50 more years to go. Well, tell that to the people in North Carolina. Tell that to the people in Florida that just happened. Tell that to the people that, just got hit by a car tonight. Every 3 seconds, somebody's passing away in this life, buddy, y'all. And they thought they had 30 years to go. What if you were to die tonight? And you stood before Jesus Christ, what would you tell him? What would you say to the Lord if you stood before him tonight? Lord, I'm in church every week. I sing in the praise band, the church choir. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I'm a pastor of a church. I give a lot of money to churches. Give a lot of money to charities. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't go out with girls that do. I do all this good stuff. And you know what the Lord's going to do? He's going to look at you with a tear in his eye, and he's going to say, sorry, I never knew you. Depart from me. Because, folks, that's not what gets you to heaven. The Bible is very, very clear about that. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, yet not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not of works. Not of works, lest any man should boast. You know what Jesus Christ wants to hear? Lord, it's nothing that I've ever done. It's only because of what you did on the cross of Calvary for me. When you put a crown of thorns on your head, when you put a whip on your back that I should have been taking, when you laid down on a cross and you put nails in your hands and your feet, when you got stuck in a hole for everybody to spit at and humiliate, when you took my sins and put them on your shoulders and you died and you went to the grave and rose again to give me an opportunity to be with God the Father, that's why I stand here. And folks, when you say that, you know what Jesus is going to say? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Come on in. Is that going to be you? Are you going to make a difference in your family's life tonight? Dads, moms. And I just want to challenge you. And again, moms are such an awesome thing, but just know that this is a statistic. If the mom's the one that's the Christ follower and takes the kids to church, there's only a 15 to 20% chance that the kid's going to follow in the mom's footsteps. But if the dad's the one that does that, he's a Christ follower and he takes the kids to church, there's a 75 to 80% chance that the kids are going to follow in the dad's footsteps. I'm not downplaying a mom because, I mean, shoot, without my wife nurturing my kids, man, I don't know where my kids would be, but I want you to know something. Dads, God made you the leader of that home. And I ask you, are you leading your home the right way? Are you being a servant to your wife and to your kids? Are you honoring your wife? Are you being the example that you need to be to your kids? Lastly, I'll just share this. You all know about Noah. You've heard the story about the ark. And you can remember that story, guys. I mean, understand that was, God told Noah to build an ark. 120 years it took Noah to build that ark, and he asked people from the town to come out and help him. And the people laughed at him, mocked him. What are you doing that for? You're in a desert. We haven't had any rain. We haven't had no water here. What in the world are you building an ark for? But folks, when that ark got completed and God brought the animals onto that ark, what was God's response? You and your family get onto that ark. And can you imagine as God's hand started to shut that door and the rain started to fall and the wells started to come up from the deep? Can you imagine what those people were thinking at that time? Can you imagine what the daughters of those, the daughter-in-laws of Noah, the moms and dads sitting outside of that ark saying, "Let us in, daughter! Let us in!" But God's hand was closing that door and nobody was getting in. And that door shut and a lot of people went to hell that night. Can I just say this? For all of us in here, that door shut. One of these days it's going to shut. And you're not going to have no chance. Folks, I feel sorry for you. You're going to be separated from God the Father for the rest of your life, for eternity. God loves you all. He sent his son Jesus to pay an awful price for each and every one of you here. I challenge you to not leave this place without putting your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Are you going to be bold enough tonight to admit that I've never put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ here tonight? And pray a prayer with me. Thank you all for allowing me to be here with you. Thank you for attending. But folks, it doesn't mean a hill of beans if you don't come face to face with the Savior. So if you don't mind, could you bow your heads, close your eyes. Father in heaven, I thank you and praise you for this night. Thank you for this church, and I thank you, Lord, for this church's desire that people come to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Father, we come out here, they put all this together for one purpose and one purpose only. It's not about them getting gifts, it's about spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. So Father, tonight I know that there's individuals in here that have never ever said yes to you. They've never surrendered their life to you, Father. But tonight you're working on their hearts. You're letting them know that they're not saved. Father, I don't want them to be doomed to destruction. I don't want them to have a chance to be in the darkness for eternity. Father, tonight I ask them to put that much that you were willing to die for me. Tonight, I surrender myself to you. I confess my sins to you. And I ask you, Lord, to come and make a home in my heart. Father, thank you so much that you were willing to die for me. And maybe there's some of you in here tonight that recognize that, man, I haven't been the mom, the dad, the son or the daughter that I need to be. I call myself a Christian, but my kids are seeing something that's not right. My wife is seeing something that's not right. I pray that you would make a change tonight. And just say, Lord, I want to rededicate my heart to you, and I want to give you everything. I want you to come into my life and change me. And help me to be the husband or the wife that I need to be. Help me to be the son or daughter that I need to be. Help me to be the grandpa or grandpa that I need to be. Father, help me to make a difference in the right way. So folks, God, I just thank you and I praise you. I thank you for this opportunity. And I pray, Lord, that if individuals made that commitment to you tonight, I pray that, God, they will come and tell the pastors. Lord, I mean, that's the first thing that we have to recognize. I mean, understand that Satan's out there and he's gonna take that opportunity away from them as soon as they leave this church. Help them to find out the joy that comes from knowing you as their Lord and Savior. Help them to come up and confess it to the pastors and let them know that they made a decision for you tonight so that they can start to work on their relationship with Christ. But thank you for Daniel. Thank you for his music. Thank you for this opportunity. Lord, may you get all the